Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to begin working on a revival of this hammerhead. Now, I believe this was originally designed as a roofing hammer. It's got a textured back like you see a lot on roofing hammers, and it's got a hatchet on the other side, so it could be for splitting shingles back when shingles were a thing, when it was actually wood shingles. And I picked this up in an estate sale, and I paid almost nothing for it. I think $1, maybe less than $1 for it. So I'm going to polish it up, get all the grime and the rust and the crap off of it. And I'm going to use this here, which is an old tool handle I took off of a damaged brush hook. So I cut it off here and I saved the handle, figuring I may have the use for it someday, and I think I've arrived at that use. And I have a wedge system, which is you put this in there and you put that in there after you cut the length you want. So I'm going to have to split this with the saw. I have a saw with a back on it. It's time for cutting and I'm really completely utterly spacing the name of the tool it's used in, but it's got a nice stiff back to it. So maybe we'll use that to get a nice clean straight cut on that, so that I can then put in the wedge once I get it in there. And I'm probably going to have to shape the handle a little. They're not the same size, but I can do that. I have the technology to shape this and then get it into the rough shape I want before I split it and then put it in and then assemble the head. Fix it with this. So the first thing up is going to be putting it in the vise, getting out the angle grinder, and seeing if I can get some of this crap out of it. Well, there's the plug I took out of the head, and I'm going to keep this because there's a significant difference between this diameter, or size I should say, because it's an oval, and the handle I'm going to use. So I'm going to want to use this as a reference, and this split right here is the front. So I'm going to orient it so that when I'm working on the handle, that it's definitely going to be in that same direction. So about 20 minutes with my angle grinder with a flap wheel on it, and here we have the tool. It looks a whole lot better. It feels a whole lot. Oh, I got a spot right there I missed. I can take that off. Feels a whole lot better, and I discovered that this, I don't know if it's going to show up, this is a Winchester trademark, made in USA. So this is a American-made tool made by Winchester. I didn't know Winchester made this type of tool. I really didn't, because it really doesn't strike me as a tomahawk, which I've kind of almost see Winchester making. It strikes me as just a tool, a roofing tool. I didn't know they made this kind of thing, and I took some of the rust off that, not all of it. You can see the points are pretty worn down. Whoever used this used it a lot. But yeah, I'm going to have to get that spot right there. I got it on this side apparently, but I missed it on that side. Okay, put it back in there while I got the angle grinder out and clean that up. But yeah, it looks a whole heck of a lot better now than it did. Well, I've put a kind of a working edge on this at the moment with my belt sander here. And I'm kind of encountering the limitations of a belt sander this size. Now, eventually I want to use this with finer belt. This is like a 120, so I'm just getting a very rough. But eventually I want to get some belts that are in the 600 to 1200 range. I encountered a guy at a flea market who reconditions and sharpens knives for a living. And this is the belt sander he uses. He just uses far better quality belts. This is the ones that came with the thing. It's from Harbor Freight. But he uses a Harbor Freight belt sander, and he just uses the slack, and that's what I'm using. So you end up with a Moran edge, so you end up with a convex edge. But the problem is that I'm only able to barely get that in there before I hit the wheel. So I'm only working right there, so I don't have a lot of space. This would be a lot easier if I had a larger belt sander that had more slack. I mean, I can use that. There's a support here, so I can do that when I'm doing different kinds of work. But when I'm working on just sharpening something like this, I really want to have the slack. I want to have that ability to get a Moran edge, a convex edge. So this is just a working edge. It's not a finished edge. but I wanted to get some of the bulk of that taken care of now, because it's a whole lot easier to manipulate it in my hand than it will be when I've got a shaft on it. So yeah, it's I mean, you could actually split shingles with this at the moment without any difficulty whatsoever. But yeah, it's the limitations of the whole size of this particular, because it's only got a 30-inch belt, so it's not very big. I mean, ideally, I would want to have a larger sander here. I would get rid of my grinder or move my grinder and put a larger sander on here, so I could have a large sander and then a small sander. It's set up, and the larger sander would take up a little more space, but that's okay. As long as the base fits on this, that's all I'm happy about. And if I had to, like, move this over here and put the sander facing that way, I wouldn't care either. And it just, this is going to be my sanding station. I still need to get a vacuum in here so I can collect the dust. At the moment, it's just kind of getting it all over the floor. I'm going to have to, sweep it up the old-fashioned way. But yeah, so we got a working edge on this. I also need some better lighting. I've only got one spotlight at the moment, and I had to take off the safety guard up here, which is less safe than if you have it. But that's the only way I can get the angle I need. But yeah, so it's getting there. Okay, update. I started shaping this, and I discovered a split. So I cut off about 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 or so, and this is going to have to be the length it is. And so I'm going to start taking off the material so I can get it down to the size I need. Okay, there we go. This is about the right size now to go in there. It slips into about there before it tightens up, which is good because I want to hammer it down till it's nice and snug. So I need to split it. I haven't done that yet. Here's the piece I've been using as a comparison until I got down to the point where I was using the head itself as a comparison. I pulled out my draw knife, a tool that I have never sharpened. I don't even know if I am sharpening it correctly. I used my scythe stone. I don't really have anything else to sharpen it with, because there's a curve that goes like this, so it presents a particular sharpening challenge that I've never had to encounter. I may have to do some research on YouTube to see if I can figure out how to sharpen that properly. And I've also never used a draw knife. Well, I've seen one used. I've never used one myself. So it was not elegant, but I got the bulk of this, a good half of the material off I needed to get off. Then I took it to my belt sander and just started playing with it there. I made a lot of sawdust, so that I would have as much control as possible over this. And this is an old piece of wood, and I'm keeping it around mostly because of the aesthetic. I mean, it's a little split down here at the base, but the shaft itself is solid. It's old, it's kind of dry, but I like the aesthetic. So I'm not really looking for a tool that I'm going to be using anytime too. I'm mostly looking at a tool that would kind of have the appearance of a tomahawk or a hatchet of some variety. I got sawdust all over my hand. Just noticed that. Well, the side effects of working with wood, I guess. So yeah, this is at this stage, and it's getting late in the day. I need to go take a break. Both not to put too much stress on my foot, and because sometimes my blood sugar can drop on me real quick, even though I made sure I had a power bar. Oh yeah, one update, in case anybody cares. I now have a power strip attached to my table, so that's good. So I have one switch that I can turn off to get everything off if I wanted to, and because I'm just leaving all these tools right where they are at the moment. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll work on this. I get to use my newest mallet, which was kind of nice. I use that to tap the head into place. I'll use a metal hammer tomorrow with some wood over it, so I'm not damaging the head, so I get a little more force behind it, so I can really seat that in there where I want it. But the nervous part is going to be splitting that. That's going to be the nervous part, because I only got one shot, so I got to make sure I do it right. So, but that's for tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about it today. In fact, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go book, turn my power off to my bench, and head upstairs. So I'll see this hopefully finished tomorrow. So there we go. We have a cut. It's not perfect, but was working under not the most ideal conditions. For example, I had to hold this with my left hand to keep it from moving this way, while I was sawing it, and because I don't have a workbench with a clamp that I can clamp things perfectly, this is the only position I can get this thing into to get it to where I want it to be. And I finally remember what kind of saw I was going to use. I could picture it in my head, but I couldn't remember the name of it. It's a miter saw, and I chose this one because it has a stiff back, so it's not going to flex on me while I'm sawing. And even though this is a traditional Western style cut on the push, which is bizarre, I've never understood why we design saws like that, as opposed to the pull saw I normally use, this has a slightly wider kerf, and I actually wanted a slightly wider kerf on this cut. I wanted to get a little more material out of there with only one go. And you notice the right side isn't perfect because, again, I'm holding with my left hand and trying to saw at the same time, so it wasn't the easiest task. So now I'm going to put the head on, tap it into place, seat it as firmly as possible, and then it's going to be to cut the wedge to width because it's too wide, and then to get that pounded home, and then work on getting the metal wedge pounded home. I actually have to cut it all off so it's all flush, and then get the metal wedge pounded home. So we're getting close to the end. So here we go. The head is in place, the wedge is in place, and now it's time to put the wooden wedge in place, and now it's time to put the steel wedge in place. This is going to be a bit of a pain because I really don't have a proper place to do this. Ideally, I would like to do this held in the vise, but I'm going to have to see if I can figure out how to hold this in the vise so I get the support I need, so I don't hurt the hammer or hurt the head or the shaft or anything. So I may monkey with my vise, and if I can't, I'll just have to freehand it and just brace the butt of the handle against a pad. So I'm trying not to damage the handle any more than it already is. Like I said, I know that the handle isn't in perfect shape, but I like the aesthetic, so I'm kind of working with it. And there we go. That's the completed wedge assembly. So we have the darker wood here in the middle, which is apparently a different kind of wood, so you got two different woods going in there. I brought this all down with my flap wheel so that it's all smooth, because this steel wedge actually was sticking up proud slightly of the whole assembly, and I didn't want it proud. I wanted it flush. And I also was able to knock off a couple of the marks I left on this with the hammer. So I'm gonna get to go outside and take a couple of pictures of this thing. I may throw it on my DeviantArt page anyway. It is a reconstruction, so I kind of proud of the fact that it came out okay. I will definitely gonna have to put a better edge on it. I'm not done with this yet. I need to get my triple stone out of the garage and down here in the basement. It's been in the garage because I didn't have any place else to use it, really. Now I have a table and sawhorses and everything down here. I can set them up, and I can set the stone up comfortably, and I can start sharpening stuff down here year round. So that's not going to be a fair weather process, because that sharpening system I've got is oily and it's messy. So there you go. This has been my reconstruction. I'm really quite happy with the way this came out, and there'll be some couple of photos at the end.